welcome everyone. We are so glad that you could join us today. Welcome to this week's Cyber Conversations brought to you by Peraton. Cyber is a program out of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota that works to motivate, empower, and educate motivate, empower, and educate girls in cybersecurity. I am Abigail Witt, a cyber leader, and we are joined by Delisa.
Hello.
Who is also another cyber leader. At any point during the program, you can ask a question via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Our guest today is Mari Galloway. Maria is the CEO and founding board member for the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. She worked at Accenture as a network engineer. She is currently a customer success architect for Palo Alto Networks. She is also an adjunct professor for UMGC. Mary is an inaugural Diversity Award winner for 2019. She has a bachelor's degree in computer information systems from Columbus State University and a master's information systems from Strayer University. Hello, Mary. It is nice to have you on today.
Hi. How are you? Excited to be here. So do we just get started? Should I tell you guys about myself, who I am?
Go ahead.
All right, so you did great with part of the intro. To continue on, so I've been in cyber and tech since the end of 2009. Like you said, I got my first job at Accenture. I was a network engineer. And basically, my job at the time was to make sure that when the National Geospatial Agency, NGA, they were transitioning from a bunch of different locations in the DC, Northern Virginia area to one main location, and we managed their transition data center. And so I got to play with switches and routers and cables and all that good stuff. But I hated it, right? I hated that job because I was the only female. And I was new. It was my first job out of college. And they wanted me to be a secretary and do hey, take notes and do these slides and do this and that. At the time, I didn't realize how valuable that was because I was able to start talking to the entire team and learn about the products they were working on and get some insight on what they were doing and where they might have needed help. And so that was my first job out in Ashburn, Virginia. Way out in the cut, drove about 53 miles one way to get there every single day. When I finally left that place, I went to, where did I go? Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to work as an information security analyst. And basically there I was managing the security of the entire high side network for the Department of the Army. And basically that's just where they have cryptic communications and they talk to each other across the Army to find stuff. So that was my responsibility. I learned a lot about SolarWinds. So if you guys are familiar with SolarWinds and the hack that happened, when that happened, I was like, oh, my poor product. But in that job, I got to meet a lot of different people. I got to talk to a lot of different folks in different agencies around the world, travel because we had 3 different locations for that particular organization. And so I got to travel to see those people. I learned a lot about security in that job, a lot about routers and switches and getting your hands dirty and cables and all of that stuff from that particular job. I moved into insider threat to help build out an insider threat program where we were. And basically that's just trying to make sure you're watching your employees to make sure they're not stealing data, they're not having any kind of weird behaviors that would indicate that there might be something going on where they're trying to steal data from the organization. And I think in that particular role was when I realized that I really like to do projects. So I like to do projects anyway, outside of work. But it was in that role that I realized, I want to work for organizations where I can help them build programs and help them put things into place to make their organization more secure. All through this, I was going to school, getting my master's, getting certificates. I started teaching. So I started teaching at a school called Everest University. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's from like way back in the day, Westwood, ITT, ECPI places. Um, and that's when I was like, yeah, I want to teach more. And I was like, yes, I got to do this. So when I left Fort Bragg, I went back up to DC. That's where my family's at. That's where my husband's family is at. And I got a job with Homeland Security. And I wasn't doing anything really technical. It was more so understanding requirements and strategy around different projects that were coming into the agency and the organization, which is kind of cool. So if you like policy type of stuff, if you like to think strategy, strategic, big picture, understanding the requirements is an interesting place to go because you have to know what an organization is trying to do and where they're trying to go. So that kind of gave me some insight into what big bosses think about when they're looking at projects and programs and technology to bring into their organization. Um, from there, have you guys heard of US CERT? So I used to work for US CERT as well. I think it's now CISA, so Cybersecurity Infrastructure something agency. Um, Jen Henley is um, the deputy executive or whatever for that organization. I used to work for them, managing the government's um, firewalls and their incident response tools, and monitoring. Okay, do we see these kind of viruses or this kind of stuff? I was there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Shell Shock. That was a long time ago, and basically that's an exploit where you can pass commands into Linux devices and get them to do stuff you want them to do. And so we got to see a lot of those things happening, like those exploits actively happening inside of our tools, and had to work with the different agencies to kind of fix that stuff. So that was kind of cool. I was also in the government right at the end of the OPM breach. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's when millions of government employees' records were breached slowly from a third party organization company that was doing some work for them. So security isn't just your own organization, right? It's your organization and then everybody that interacts with your organization. You got to make sure that they're secure too. And so I left the government to help a casino get their security infrastructure in place. So that's what moved me out here to Las Vegas. So if you're ever in Las Vegas, if you're old enough to come and hang out, let me know. But I left the government because while I think it was great, there was more money in the private sector and there was more flexibility. You got to do a little bit more with tools and things moved a little bit faster in the private sector. And so here in Las Vegas, I worked for Sands Casino. So Venetian and the Palazzo looks just like Venice. If you've ever been to Venice, if you haven't, look it up online. It looks just like that. And I got to build their vulnerability management program. And basically with that, um, I get to find all of the vulnerabilities and then work with the different stakeholders, the different departments to get that stuff fixed. Um, for those that don't know, SANS was hacked in 2014, and so they went on a mission to bring a number of folks in to help them become more secure. And the reason that's important is because the hack on the Venetian was just as big as the hack at Target. Nobody knows about it. So that's what I mean by like the private sector. There's like a lot of money involved, and so um, they were able to keep it quiet. And the cool thing about working in the casino industry or hospitality in general is you're governed by different laws and rules. So in the casino, we had to have certain number of cameras on all of the tables because we need to be able to monitor stuff. If a camera went down, you had to shut the table down until the camera was fixed. If your elevators or your escalators or your heat or your air goes out because of a security incident or whatever, the casino shuts down. And so when the casino got breached from Pennsylvania, because there were some old accounts that were still on the system in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was connected to Vegas, they were able to go from Pennsylvania to Vegas and steal data, social security numbers, employee data, patron data, financial data. And if you're not familiar, if you go to Darknet Diaries, there is a segment on what happened and how they were able to pull this information. And it wasn't because they were just bored. The bad guys came in because the owner of the casino said some stuff on the internet. So be careful what you say when you go on social media. It might come back to haunt you. But yeah, they hacked in and they told him, "Hey, we're doing this because of what you said." So that was kind of cool that to see from a government perspective to the private sector, in hospitality, what the focus was on when it comes to security. A lot of casinos don't have really good security. So after that incident, you start to see an uptick in the casinos doing their thing. Um, the other thing about working for international and international casinos, you get to travel. So I got to go to Singapore for a month to help them get their security stuff going um, as a part of SANS. That's the cool thing about security. You get to travel. Most of these companies are global companies if you work with bigger ones. I work at Palo Alto now. I left from the casino to come to Palo Alto as a customer success architect where I would help customers post sales. So they would buy our automation product so that they could have so that they could orchestrate some of that low hanging fruit. Like you get phishing emails all the time. All right, let's automate that process so that we can have our analysts do other stuff. Now I literally just started last week as a systems engineer, which is on the pre-sale side. So now I get to talk to customers and convince them to come over and buy our product. Still security, still technical. I still have to know all of our tools. I have to know how to, set them up, navigate, understand how they pull data in. But it's on the pre-sale side. So for those interested or that may be interested, you don't have to necessarily be super technical to be in cyber, right? You know enough, you're good. But you can do technical stuff like pen testing or, digital forensics or things like that. You can do management. So if you want to manage those teams, and then you can do sales. And that's where you learn specific tools, ins and outs, and then you try and sell it to the customer. So that's where I'm at now. As if that's not a lot. Outside of that, I also run the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, a 501c3 national nonprofit with our bases in Northern Virginia. We do hands-on training for women and girls in all areas of cybersecurity. For the girls, we do STEM-based programming to get them exposed to different options in the world, right? Doesn't have to necessarily be cybersecurity, but here's some different options for you to choose from. We do games, cyber games. If there's anyone listening, wicked6.com, check it out. We have a global cyber game coming up. 24 hours, international, across the board. There's going to be speakers from all the different countries talking in their native languages. And you get to play games. We want to get 1,000 women and girls to participate in that. Just as a way to expose people to cybersecurity and say, hey, come play this game, get an idea, let's see what you do, and then maybe you can consider a career in this space. What else? I also do like bookkeeping on the side, and I teach for the University of Maryland global campus. But that's my career. I got my start at Accenture, but I got that job through a network. My mom had applied for a job at Accenture when she had retired from the military, and the recruiter was saying they were hiring IT folks. And so she put my name in, the lady called, I had the interview, and I got the job. So she's mom, cool, whatever, but having a network of folks is what will help you advance in this space as an IT person, as a security person, pretty much in any industry. But it also starts to become your support system once you're in the space. I think that's about it. That's kind of how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for attending Cyber Conversations. You have a very inspiring story. Now we'll go to the Q&A section. I would like to remind the audience to put the questions you have in the Q&A sections. While we're waiting for questions from the audience, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
My first question is, what would you like your lasting impact to be?
Dang, that's a question I ask you guys. To be honest, I just want to know. I want people to know that I tried to help as many people as I could, right? Whether that's obviously I work for, I run a nonprofit for women, but men, women, kids, not whoever, whatever. I want people to know that was my goal, is to help people. If I help one person make it to the next level, I'm happy.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience. The question is, you said you worked on the network at Fort Bragg. Were you working for the Army as a civilian?
Yes. So I was not a government employee. I was actually a contractor. So the majority of my career was government contracts. So if you're not familiar with how those work, a small company like, say, Acme Inc. gets a contract, then they hire me to work on this government contract. That'll last for a year, can go to 3 years, can go to 5 years, but most of the time it's like 1 year. Um, and so I did that up until I went to Homeland Security. And from there, I did become a government employee. I got a federal job, but I was just bored and I didn't like it. So I said, yep, I'm out. I'm going to go to Vegas and do something fun.
Awesome. What is a risk you took in your career that paid off?
Leaving the government. So we've been in Vegas since December 2016. And it was the hardest thing for me to say, I'm gonna leave this job, because if you're familiar with the government, um, they have this role called an SES, which is a selected executive service role. So it's like pretty high up there. You have to go through all these interviews, and you're in charge of a lot of things. And that was my goal originally. And a friend of mine was like, hey, you want to do pen testing? We need to look at this job in Las Vegas. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to go to Vegas. It's too hot. I had just been there. My feet were burning. It's like 120 degrees in the summertime. It's like, no, I'm good. And here I am 5 years later. So it definitely worked out. Um, and I recommend that to anybody. If you're in a place where you can relocate, you can negotiate the relocation in your onboarding. But if you're in a place where you can relocate, do it. There's jobs everywhere. There's no reason to stay. So I think that was the biggest risk that I took, leaving the known to come to the unknown.
Awesome. What does your typical day at work look like?
Sleeping, drinking water, watching TV. No. Um, so I wake up at about 5 every day. My first alarm goes off at 5:30, but I just wake up anyway. Um, Sometimes I'll exercise. Uh, I do some nonprofit work, so either like emails, trying to solicit from sponsors to get people to come and sponsor the organization. Um, Mentoring people, will be like, hey, can I talk to you? Let's talk about XYZ. Then I start my regular work. And on the sales side, there's a lot of meetings and there's a lot of talking. So you have to be comfortable with talking. We have a lot of internal meetings. We have conversations with customers to understand what their pain points are, understand, what they're currently doing, where they want to go in the future, um, how they're going to grow. And we want to make sure that we can figure out that information so we can grow with them. Um, and then after that, I'll do some more cyberjutsu stuff. I'll do some teaching stuff. I'll do a little bit of bookkeeping. Some days I'll go bowling. So we're on a bowling league. So tonight we bowl. Got to have the fun stuff in there, right? You can't just be working all the time. You bowl, or I do Legos. I have a bunch of Legos. I'm getting ready to build the Titanic Lego set. So if you haven't seen it, it's huge. um, but that's typically what I do. And the other cool part about Vegas, if you like to swim, they have tons of pool parties and tons of places to go and swim and do all that fun stuff. So Vegas is actually a really cool place to be in right now.
Awesome. That's incredible. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out in cybersecurity?
Don't give up. Don't give up. I want to give up every day. Something happens every single day, and I just want to be like, you know what? I'm done with it. Toss my hands. I'm going to go and be. So my dream job is to be a Walmart greeter. So once I retire from this, I want to go and do that. Totally serious about that too. Um, but yeah, don't give up because there's gonna be challenges. There's gonna be folks that come at you and say you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you don't need to be here, and they're totally wrong. We need all of the voices we can get, all of the diverse voices, whether that's minorities, women, neurodiverse folks, LGBTQIA plus. We need everybody's voice in this mix to better protect against the bad guys.
Awesome. If you could turn back time, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Jeez. Dang. When I was 20, I was getting married. Um, Start sooner. Be curious sooner. When I was 20, I was still in college. I was working at, I don't even know where I was working. I think I was working at the NCO club on the base because my husband was in the army. And it was fun, but I wish I would have gotten into the tech and the cyber stuff a little bit earlier than 20. Or how old am I? Before I age myself. I think I was like 25 or 26 or something like that. Um, but yeah, get started early and like dive into it and whatnot.
This could be from work or outside of work, but what is the coolest thing you've ever done?
I spent 2 weeks in China on a personal vacation, not on a work vacation. We went to Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. I like to travel, so if I can travel someplace, I'm gonna be on a plane to make it happen. Um, yeah, that's probably going to China. The next thing I want to do is skydive. Yeah. So
Awesome.
I'm building the courage up to jump out of a perfectly good plane.
Amazing. You mentioned some recent data breaches that are like some of the ones that are going on a lot. So, what do you think are the lessons learned from these recent data breaches?
To have a plan in place. Um, so data breaches happen every day. There's a website. I can't think of the name of it right now, but when I was getting my master's degree, I referenced it. Plus the Verizon DBIR report. There's a data breach every single day. We just don't know about it. We don't hear about it. But the lessons learned for most of this stuff is you need to have visibility into your assets and what you have. People think assets are simply, the hard drive, the hardware, but it's also cloud stuff. It's also applications. It's also people. And so you need to have visibility into what your infrastructure looks like and what your landscape looks like. Once you have visibility, you can start putting stuff into place, defense in depth, putting in firewalls, putting in endpoint protection, putting in other monitoring tools so that you can see what's happening. And I think with a lot of the ones we've seen, like the Colonial Pipeline and obviously SolarWinds, that was the third party. That was a third party person. That was DLL and somebody else's stuff. Um, it was okay. We need to make sure we have visibility, and we need to know who's coming on our network and who's not supposed to be here.
Great. What challenge in your life shaped you the most?
Being a military child. So I come from a military background. My mom's retired Air Force. My stepdad's retired. Dad, grandmother, husband was in the army. Um, at the time, it sucked because you're constantly moving every couple of years. You don't really get to, you don't have a home, right? You don't say, yeah, I'm from so and so because you're not from anywhere. You're just from everywhere. Um, and so your friendships, I'll see people they've known these people for 20 years and like best friends, or they've known each other since they were like 4. While I have friends like that, we're not as close, right? So that was always a challenge. But what that challenge did do was help me acclimate to new environments. I was able to, I knew what to do. I was a cheerleader and I ran track in high school. And so I knew, okay, let me go ahead and jump into this because I'm going to start meeting people. I'm going to start doing X, Y, Z. And I'm a super overachiever, so I was like in student government and I played in the band and all that stuff. And so those experiences then have helped build my network now as an adult.
Amazing. If you could write a book tomorrow, what would it be about?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Myself? I didn't think my story was important, and I didn't think that me coming up as a military brat with a little bit of exposure to technology and that kind of thing, I didn't think it was important. And once I started telling my story a little bit more, and people started resonating with it, like, oh, I failed that exam too, and like, oh, I did this, and oh, I lived here, and it's like, oh, you don't have to be a hacker at 12 to be considered, special in the industry. You can be a regular person. So I think I'd write it about myself. I also want to write some fiction books, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. As a closing question, what advice would you give to all the young people watching this session?
We need you in this field. So if you're interested, just come and do it, right? You have to just step out there and just go for it. You're going to get no's. People are going to say, nope, nope, nope. That's okay. I've been rejected from a lot of jobs. I've been rejected from a lot of things. But I use that energy and that like, because there's been some ones where I was like, dang, that's personal. I feel attacked right now. I've used that energy to make me better, to go after the education I needed, to reach out to the folks that I needed to. So never give up, take that leap, and just let's do it because we need those voices right now.
I love that. That is beautiful.
We need you. Come on, come
Yeah,
over.
yeah. I am gonna open up a poll as soon as I can
Uh-oh.
find it.
Uh-oh. A little nervous.
There we go. Should be good. I'm opening a poll, and we really appreciate our viewers to complete this to let us know a little bit about you. Please follow all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our website at cyber.org for more information about our programs and upcoming cyber conversations. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mary, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. I was happy to be here. Let me know how I can help.
Sure. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.